Welcome back. This week for the Shuffle feature, we are going to be taking a look at all the mainline Ace Combat games. Started out as Air Combat when it came to the United States. It first hit the arcades way back in 1992, but was one of the release titles on the PlayStation and was actually one of the first games I ever laid my hands on the console. It's pretty basic. You've got a low-key screen to pick your missions. You've got a couple of stats on your planes, and a fairly basic-looking mission screen. But you know what? This was their first attempt. It was, 26 years ago now. It was the first generation of the PlayStation. It was one of the first real, arcade flight games to actually hit the market, and, I'm glad that they didn't just stop with this one instance of it. Once you get into the game, it's pretty standard. You've got a ridiculous number of missiles, which is one of the things that kind of set it apart, is it kind of mixed arcade and realism. You've got real planes, you've got, for the most part, realistic physics and motion, but you've also got 60-plus missiles on one plane, and that just doesn't happen. You can also take a fairly ridiculous amount of damage before you'd have to even worry about your plane blowing up. The first game, obviously, the graphics are really basic. The plane looks fantastic, but the landscape, not so much. They did a good job making the horizon, making it not look too much like things are popping in the distance, but it's still like a really basic gradient. It definitely showed early on what the PlayStation could do, though.
Enemy inside. Up ahead! Enemy locked on target. Fire! Shoot him down! Great shot! He's wasted! Enemy in sight. Fire! Shoot him down! Bingo! Yahoo! Enemy locked on. He's wasted! Bingo! Yahoo! Don't let that one! Mission accomplished.
At the end of your run, you get a rather simple victory splash, a silly amount of money based on what you shot down over the course of the mission, which you could then put toward purchasing new planes to add to your garage. One thing that was extremely unique, and partially so because Namco actually patented the ability to do so, was the feature of being able to unlock little mini games to play during loading screens. You'd hold down R1 and circle while the loading screen was coming up, enter the code, and then after the end of the next mission, you'd have this wacky little mini game where your controls are just to rotate, and it was not, I repeat, not an easy game to play. A few years later, in 1997, Ace Combat 2 showed up. It was overall an improvement, but the main benefit that it provided to the series was the invention of the environment, the world that you would be in for most of the rest of the series, known by fans as Strange Real. This is more fleshed out. Apparently this game got a remake on the 3DS titled Assault Horizon Legacy, where this gets placed in the nation of Usia, and you're fighting against the Union of Yuktobanian Republics, which if you've only played the PS2 games, those will sound familiar. This places it about 4 years after the end of the Balkan War. So somewhere between Ace Combat 0 and Ace Combat 4. But we'll get to those in due time. For now, we focus on Ace Combat 2. You can see the bump in production quality fairly early on. Here you've got your menu system to select your mission, to save your game, to choose your plane, and a 3D demonstration of what mission you're going to be handling, which pretty much becomes the standard throughout the rest of the series. Obviously, it increases in quality as time goes on, but this was the main basic improvement there. The planes also are far more detailed and have quite a few additional statistics to take into consideration. You can see here that they have done a lot more work to improve the visuals. The textures are better on your plane, on the ground, but that draw distance, oof. You get some quite obvious popping in. Again, this game came out 21 years ago. I'm not going to be too harsh on them for it, but it is a little bit difficult to watch nowadays. Still have the ridiculous number of missiles, which is now at least represented by a number. But all in all, the gameplay is pretty much the same, except now you do have a fuel meter that kind of gives you a time limit on how long you can take to complete the mission. Unfortunately, they did not follow through with the patent they came up with in the original game, and dispensed with the load screens that you could play games on, but they kind of hid the load times behind the debriefing and status stuff, so that's not so bad. 3 years later, in 2000, a futuristic date for a futuristic game, Ace Combat 3 Electrosphere. Apparently in Japan, this was a 2-disc game with voice acting and the whole shebang, something like 56 missions. They cut it down severely for the North American release, which, that's okay. It takes place in a more futuristic setting, and you're probably getting that vibe looking at the menu system here. It also takes place in a completely different universe, the United Galaxy Space Force universe that a lot of Namco's sci-fi games of the time took place in. This had a lot more of an anime feel to it, and they started you off, instead of like an F4 or an F-16, they start you off in the futuristic-looking Typhoon. It's still very much based on real-life planes, But apparently farther along, there are actually spaceplane missions. Now you can see that the graphics did get yet another bump. The lighting is a lot more appealing on this game. You still get some pop in, but they kind of hide it a little bit more with the distance fog, which I'd rather they do that. The interface is supposed to look all futuristic, of course, and somehow this tiny plane is also able to carry 72 missiles. But you know what? That aspect of it really tends to make it a lot easier to play, because one of the things in these games is you've got regular guns, but it is really difficult to properly draw a bead on an enemy and actually get your guns to fire properly and hit them. Now you'll notice that that circle there that just disappeared because the enemy got taken out. That is where you're supposed to aim your guns. It's kind of an assistance, so you can aim your guns there, and it kind of helps you lead your target in that way. So you can still use the guns, it's just not quite as much fun and not quite as satisfying. They didn't really go back to this, although there were some whispers that the Ace Combat Infinity free-to-play game on the PlayStation 3 took place in the same United Space Force world, but it took place in more current time, so it was almost kind of like a prequel to this game. Ace Combat Infinity is not featured in this video. It is going to be shut down later this month for the online features at least, but I have to say it was a really good addition to the series, and something that kind of helped tide us over a little bit between 6 and the upcoming 7.
Bingo.
A ship of unknown origin has been detected approaching the Sand Island coastline. We've confirmed that this ship has launched numerous unmanned aerial vehicles probably used for reconnaissance. The UAV will
Only
likely
1
return
year
to the
later,
launch
in
ship
2001,
after completing
Ace
their final
Combat
operations.
4 released on the
You are to halt this
PlayStation 2.
operation by intercepting
Obviously,
and
along
destroying
with
recon
the
drones before they
graphical
can be recovered by the
boost
ship. However,
that
do
you
not
get
attack
from
the ship
going
until
from the
further orders
PS1
are
to the
transmitted.
PS2, they introduced quite a few new concepts too, with full voice acting, full animated cutscenes. It really brought the world of Strange Reel to life. The storyline in all of the PS2 games were better than some role-playing games that I played. But going back to the technical stuff, you can see that the draw distance is pretty good. You've actually got clouds now that you're flying through. Much better, much smoother, and they actually had a 16:9 aspect ratio that you could choose, which was pretty impressive for 2001. And it really didn't impact the gameplay at all. It was very fluid. In this game, it also added the ability to respond with yes or no to various things popping up. That can sometimes change a few minor things in the story. You can also send commands to your wingmen. But one of the biggest things that struck me in this series was the radio chatter. It's very well varied, and your call sign in this game is Mobius 1. And over the course of the game, you'll start to hear allies getting enthusiastic and a morale boost because Mobius 1 is here to protect them, or enemies saying, oh no, we're boned, it's Mobius 1. And they did a fantastic job of actually bringing you into the overall world.
Secure the local airspace until retrieval is complete. Flight of 4 fighters inbound. Believed to be the same squadron from 2 days ago.
Ace Combat 4 also introduced a new element to the debriefing screen where it shows you a replay of the entire battle. It shows every enemy, every ally, focusing on your craft, of course. I call this ribbon mode, and it is really fun to watch. I sit and watch through almost every one of these, especially when it's a really thick furball and you just get this knot of ribbons. It's really great to just kind of sit and watch while they give you your debriefing.
"15 years ago, there was a war. Well, war's broken out here plenty of times before. They've tried to invade
Ace Combat 5 takes us to the continent of Osea, where we hadn't quite been yet. This takes place 15 years after a war in an area known as Belka. And in this game, you play with the call sign of Rosgreaves. Again, its storyline is fantastic. You get a really good sense of the gravity of all of it. But to be perfectly honest, it's incremental. It really didn't introduce much of anything new, which is interesting. Because in a game like this, usually the selling point is, oh, look how much better we were on graphics, on plane selection, on all of these technical details than the last game. But for Ace Combat 5, really, Partially, I think they realized that they didn't really have any competition to speak of, but the main drawing point is just, we've got more storyline to show you in this world, and we hope you enjoy it. Here you can see one of the cutscenes with the actual in-game engine. And we're right back into the gameplay. So again, you've got the ability to command your wingmen. You get the yes and no questions on occasion and everything, but like I said, for the most part, it's a very similar game to Ace Combat 4. But you know what? If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Second Lieutenant Alvin H. Davenport. Zip it. You need a nickname too? I respectfully ask to be called Chopper, sir. I'm afraid I may not be able to respond to any other moniker. That does fit you well. I've got a better name for you, but I'll keep it to myself. Okay?
2 years later, we go 15 years into the past with a prequel to the series, Ace Combat Zero. This game takes place during the Balkan War. That was the stage set for Ace Combat 5. We still get the 16:9 screen ratio, so yay. But one of the interesting bits on this one was a gameplay mechanic where you would kind of by your actions choose what type of ace you are. Depending on whether you'd eradicate the enemy or let some of them live or go after non-combatants, you'd be rated either a mercenary, a soldier, or a knight. And each of these would actually factor into, radio chatter, into branching storylines. Another interesting thing they did was for the cutscenes, they actually had a live actor playing one of the roles and speaking the parts. It's kind of from the perspective of them reliving the past, of trying to recover this bit of lost history during the Balkan War. But again, the storyline is every bit as good as what you'd expect. This takes place, again, 15 years prior to the previous game, but it even takes place before the main event that kind of shatters the world in Ace Combat 4, a giant meteor shower called Ulysses that causes them to start building huge super weapons. Definitely a fantastic game. Play all of these. Just honestly, play them all. Another fun example of the strange real world is that you'll get impossible coordinates, 239 degrees east here. It's kind of fun that they are almost real coordinates, but you're not going to find a 239 east on Earth. Another thing that I remember fairly vividly from, honestly, all three of the PS2 Ace Combat games is the music. The music is fantastic. The final battle on Ace Combat 4 has this great operatic theme, but one of the pieces that I enjoy the most from Ace Combat Zero is at one point you're in a dogfight and all it is just a guitar, a bit of guitar, kind of like almost like a mariachi theme, and it was just really fantastic. Some of the other games that appeared on the other consoles had some great music too. There's one from Ace Combat X that was on the PSP that had a really great bit of singing along with some taiko drums in the background. It's one of those songs that I just love playing really, really loud in the car and just having the music surround me. But it adds to everything else about the Ace Combat series that just makes you feel more and more epic. For a game that opened up the PlayStation era and was a staple of the PlayStation consoles for a decade previously, Ace Combat 6 was exclusive to the Xbox 360. You can definitely see the 7th generation graphics on display here. The draw distance is amazing. The detail on the ground and everywhere else is just fantastic. Again, we've got a gripping storyline, this time taking place over the skies of Grace Maria, which is on yet another continent that we had not yet been to. To be perfectly honest, I haven't played this game all the way through yet. Partially because I only recently picked up a working Xbox 360, and then after I got that, it took me another couple of months to locate a copy of this game. So the other night I was playing it to grab the gameplay, and I didn't want to stop playing. I mean, I had to come, stop and work on the video, but the storyline that was set up was already grabbing hold of me, and it was just so nice to play Ace Combat again with a modern-ish console. Gameplay-wise, it doesn't have too much different. You've got your ally commands and all of that. But you've got a lot more going on the screen. Not that it's cluttered, it's just more useful information, like the orientation of planes that are firing on you or that you have targeted. Videos of whoever's contacting you on the radio, that sort of thing. But the graphics, absolutely fantastic, and I am really actually looking forward to going back and playing this game some more. Ace Combat 6 was also the first game in the series to feature online multiplayer, which I'm probably not going to get all that much into, but normally I don't do too terribly well on multiplayer games, but when I was playing Ace Combat Infinity on the PS3, I actually did pretty well, so I don't know, maybe I will try my hand at it. But aside from a couple of games on the PC and the PS3 and some of the mobile consoles, we haven't seen a full-on mainline Ace Combat game in nearly 11 years. This came out toward the end of 2007. As I'm speaking right now, it is March of 2018, but we do have a glimmer of hope on the horizon.
All airborne tanks have been destroyed. Ghost Eye, how are things on the ground?
We've managed to stave them off so far, but we've got to stay on constant alert.
Roger that.
皆さんこんにちは。エースコンバットシリーズブランドプロデューサーの河野です。今日はドイツで開催されているゲームスコムに合わせ開発中のエースコンバット7の新しいプレイ映像をお届けします。今回は
We don't have a concrete release date for this as of yet, but Ace Combat 7 is coming out in 2018, and it looks fantastic. It's going to support the PSVR headset. It's unclear whether that's going to be for the full game or not, but even if it's just a couple of missions, that's going to be amazing. Another thing that they were showing off on some of the tech demos was that when you'd fly through clouds, you would get water condensation on your plane, and if you stayed in the cloud too long, that water condensation would freeze and start causing problems for your avionics. You can also see the in-cockpit view here is just immaculately detailed. The graphics are suitably another generation bump, but I can't think of another game I've been looking forward to quite as much for quite as long as I have Ace Combat 7.
ここのマップは
And that is why, since it's a 5 Thursday month, as is my custom, I'm going to be doing a giveaway. When this game is announced, and when it is finally available for pre-order, lucky winner will be getting a code for Ace Combat 7 absolutely free from the Unfolded Tesseract. Please retweet this video. That will enter you. I will also be opening this up to all of my followers on Twitch and all of the followers that I have on YouTube that have their subscriptions visible. If your subscriptions are not visible, I can't see that you're subscribed to me. So please do that if at all possible. But those 3 entry methods will get you into a random pick to get a free copy of this game. I may also give away a copy of... I will be giving away also a copy of Ace Combat 5 that I got accidentally in a demo disc case that I picked up from Goodwill at one point. It works perfectly fine. It is just a spare copy of Ace Combat 5. So I will be giving that away to a lucky winner as well. So stick around and retweet, follow on Twitch, subscribe on YouTube, and you can have a chance at winning one of those 2 prizes.
ということで、今回のご紹介はそろそろ終わ誰か出てきましたね。新たな敵がというところなんですが、この辺で今回の映像としては終わらせていただきたいと思っております。ありがとうございました。以上、エースコンバットシリーズブランドプロデューサーのトーンでした。
I would also like to thank you for watching this video. Feel free to spread this video far and wide. Give me a like, give me a comment. I will see you again next week.